Welcome to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson and I ask my guests one simple question. Why? Focusing on the importance of why, I share with you the relatable, uplifting and inspiring conversations I have with people from all walks of life. This podcast will encourage you to focus on your why to enable and empower you to achieve the success you desire. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why. Today on the Focus on Why podcast, I am joined by Richard Thorpe. Welcome.
Hello, Amy. Thank you for having me.
Very nice surprise. Very, very exciting. We were introduced by one of my lovely colleagues, Michelle. So really nice to have you on board on the Focus on Why and finding out all about your why. And I've got a feeling there might be a few coming up because of the various hats that you wear.
Let's see where we get to. I'm quite looking forward to exploring this myself, I think.
Excellent. So explain a little bit about what it is you're doing right now.
Right now I'm sitting at a National One rugby club in Thame in Buckinghamshire. 2 weeks ago, I was appointed the director of rugby of Chinna Rugby Club. I've got a big background in rugby, which we may get to. So my days at the moment are filled with building a team for whenever we come out of COVID-19. But I mean, essentially, I'm a coach, and I'm going to be coaching a group of men now, similar to what I do in the rest of my life, of my working life, in executive coaching, performance coaching. So it's going to be an interesting period for me in terms of time management and just sort of establishing priorities and so on, because there's a lot on the to-do list right now.
I can imagine. So with your executive coaching beforehand, was it always on a one-to-one basis?
No, so predominantly I work as a one-to-one performance coach. I'll work with a couple of different groups, professional athletes, executives, and then the next generation of future business owners, or the next generation of business owners. So that's typically the family members of high net worth and ultra high net worth individuals, but typically they're still involved in their companies. And so I work with those three groups. And the realities of it are I probably spend about 80% of my time in one-to-one coaching. That's usually at my office on Wimpole Street up in London. And the other 20% will be delivering workshops, presentations, seminars and so on.
So how did you find yourself as an executive coach?
All right. Well, do you know what? I think most people fall into executive coaching. They usually have had their own experience. They may have engaged with a coach as well. And going through that, you subsequently go, do you know what? I think I could do this quite well. I was very similar. So I'd retired from a 13-year professional rugby career in 2016. I moved into a property investment company that I was running alongside my brother. And about 18 months in, I started to struggle a little bit with my transition, letting go of being a professional athlete and just the demands of business, of now moving from the changing room to the boardroom and so on. It comes with its challenges. And I started working with a coach, and I just went straight to the top. So a company that I now work with, Cognacity, a Harley Street institution, whom focus predominantly on mental health and mental disorders, but they also have a performance arm to the business. So I actually went to Cognacity and I just said, look, who is your top performance coach? Because I want to kind of churn through some stuff. I want to move on from being a rugby player and go become an outstanding businessman. And I was very fortunate to be able to work with an outstanding coach at Cognacity. And I kind of came through that process with no real intention of becoming a coach. I actually, and I think this is similar to you, Amy, I just started organically coaching other people alongside my other business activity. So I was doing some rugby coaching at a rugby club, and a player walked in and asked to see me in a changing room. And as he sat down opposite me, I was his head coach at the time, and he was just one of our new players. He sat down opposite me, and it was very obvious. You or probably any of your listeners would be able to recognize on someone's face when something's very, very wrong. And he didn't really even need to say anything. And I just went, okay, let's spend some time together. And we did. We started meeting up for a coffee once a week for an hour before training. And he came through that episode in his life. And I just thought, gosh, do you know what? I got so much out of that experience. All informal, nothing in writing, or there was not even an agreement between us. It wasn't a coach and coachee or a therapist and a patient. It was just two friends having a conversation with each other. And my network and the people that I know obviously are in sport. And I just organically started working with other athletes that had retired from full-time professional sport, and were just sort of struggling a little bit with where they're going now. And I got about 6 months in and thought, you know what, there's a business here, and I love it. And yes, property is very much still there for me, but I don't work in it day to day anymore. I leave that to my brother and our team at our office in Knightsbridge, and I do some opportunistic business development for them, and that's kind of it. I focus exclusively now on getting the best out of people. So whether that's executives, whether it's professional athletes during or after their career, or be it future business owners, or even current rugby players, as a director of rugby of a rugby club, which I am now, is about getting the best out of people, because there are some blockages that it's quite common, and you start to see patterns in, particularly when you're working with similar groups, certain patterns that people follow when it starts to challenge them. And actually just being given a little steer, or just being that support network, or actually maybe just someone that can come in and challenge them when they need to be challenged on something, can make that difference between them kind of just staying where they are or moving forward to where they have the potential to be.
So it's something that you noticed, that the moving, I like the phrase you used, changing room to boardroom. And people are ready for that transition because they've just been in a career that they spent their entire life growing up wanting to achieve, and then they just come out of it almost overnight. How are they feeling? What's their plan?
Well, so firstly, the statistics are that more than half of rugby players will develop a mental disorder within the first 2 years of retiring. That's typically a depression or an anxiety disorder. In football, the stats are getting slightly better now. It used to be 60% of footballers would be bankrupt within 5 years of retiring. The latest stats from the charity X Pro put it just over 40% now. So they're moving in the right direction. But still, that is outrageous for young men to have earned all that money, to have front-loaded their life's earnings effectively, to have not had the advice, the foresight to handle that in the correct way. And it still is about half of them go bankrupt, which is quite sad. Professional cricket, you're twice as likely to take your own life if you've ever played professional cricket, based against the standards of normal society. So there's a real need there in pro sport. And I basically work to try and smooth that curve. So when you retire, to the point that you've kind of come through it, if you like. For rugby players, it's about 2 years. But you'll have this dip in the middle. And I try to smooth that curve, because it's still a process, right? You still have to go through it. Like a bereavement, until you actually cry and you get angry and you go through that emotional process, it's very hard to move on. And it's the same with any transition really in life. Pro sport's quite at the acute end of the transition spectrum, but there are many transitions that we go through. Retirement from anything. I mean, people at the end of their working careers, now they've just got time on their hands and sat in their own mind now. It can be really hard. So ultimately, I can't even remember what the original question was now.
No, I think you answered all of them. It's just
you have to stop me waffling.
No, please, it's your space. So what I'm seeing there and what I'm hearing are some shocking statistics. Is there any way that you can preempt and explain to people that this is what's going to happen as they're sort of nearing retirement?
Yeah, I absolutely there is. So the rugby players, obviously I know rugby really well. The Rugby Players Association do a very good job of putting that information out to the current players. So the current Premiership players, they'll have regular meetings with an RPA representative saying, look, this is what's going to happen. This is what you need to do in order to offset it. Go and get some qualifications in something. Go and find some work experience. Go and explore starting your own business. Build your network. Think outside of the game. problem we have, and this is where I kind of start to come in, and this feeds into the challenge aspect of the coaching that I do, is that the majority of athletes, whether you're a rugby player, footballer, anything else, you train for a few hours a day. The rest of your time, what are you doing? You're in the coffee shop with your mates, or you're at home on the PlayStation. That's it for the majority of professional athletes. You'll get a handful that will be proactive, and they'll be out there building businesses, getting work experience. A good friend of mine, Owen Hickey, he now runs a private equity firm in Paris. But he was a professional rugby player, just knocking out master's degrees. He's got more degrees than a thermometer. He's so intelligent, and he's had a full professional rugby career behind him. I mean, he would be an outlier, really. But if he can do it, there's not really any reason why the rest of them can't. So really what it is it's lighting that spark when, yes, you're tired from training. Yes, you need to go home and put your feet up. But actually, that's your opportunity to move forward with life. You know, maybe we could tie into COVID-19 and us all being in lockdown right now. I think most of us are kind of starting to get a little bit like, okay, the novelty's worn off now. How many of us can honestly hold up our hand and say, we actually took this opportunity to move forward? We leveled up during this period because we had the time to do it. I mean, some people, they're still working flat out and they're working really hard, but have you been establishing new ways of working, being innovative and creative? Because we've all had to be. And it's how you react in those sorts of spaces, in those sorts of events in your life, I mean, ultimately dictate the person you become, in my experience.
And it's interesting, the three sports that you focus on, the rugby, the football, the cricket. Now, they're all team-based sports. Do you think that people who are on sports that are individual sports fare better because they're not relying on other people?
I would say I don't have any statistics on it. I've worked with individual sportsmen, and from what I can see, it's just as bad.
Really?
Because if you're an individual sportsman, let's say you're a Formula One driver, you've got an entire team behind you. It is actually a team sport. If you're a golfer, you've got your caddy next to you, but you go out and you play golf all day, you're going to be tired after your day's golf. How much enthusiasm do you have to really go out and pursue extracurricular activities, which there would be if you're a pro golfer, I suppose? You've probably locked into your mind, well, I can play golf until I'm in my 60s and 70s or whatever it is and still get paid for it. But where's your diversification? What happens if you've got an injury? What happens if something happened? Something I'm now learning in business, particularly in some hiccups that we've had along the way. It's the journey of any entrepreneur, right? Is actually to have multiple sources of income. I almost cringe as I say that because so many, it's just used in all of these training things that go on and everything else. But when you actually start to experience its necessity, if you're just a one-trick pony, when the going gets tough, you've got nothing else supporting you. All your eggs are in the same basket, and when that basket falls on the floor, what are you eating?
So at what point did you realise that this was something that you needed to embrace?
So, good question. So while I played for a team called Leicester Tigers in my late 20s. I joined them, I was about 28 years old. And I'd always been really pulled at school as well to psychology. I'd always wanted to study psychology at university. I never went to university though. So I decided to go and do a certificate of higher education in counselling while I was at Leicester. And at that time, I was going to become a psychotherapist when I retired. I was going to go and hopefully try and get into Oxford to do their masters because I'll play rugby for them or something like that. So that was kind of my thinking in the back of your mind. You know, aim for the stars, you might land on the moon type approach. But I subsequently moved into property and the sort of allure of like, oh, I want to go make money and all of that. I kind of got sucked in by that. It was when I decided basically to make the decision to step out and to go full time as a coach. I went and got trained. So I went and got my diplomas and my relative accreditations and got my hours up and all of that to get my ICF accreditation and all that sort of stuff. I was reconnecting with that time when I was at Leicester. I was like, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to help people? What's that all about? And I suppose what I've kind of experienced over my life is that you don't get that sense of fulfillment and that like overwhelming joy in life when you buy expensive things and when you have wonderful things. I've had expensive cars, I've had nice watches. None of them actually made me happy. When I look back over my life, the things that have made me happy is when I've made a difference in someone else's life. There's nothing now. I've been so fortunate to have worked with some outstanding human beings. And whenever we cross paths now, you can just see that I played a role in that person's development. I helped facilitate his move forward. It beats everything. Literally, it beats anything. You live in the middle of nowhere, in a crap hole, and drive ride a bike or whatever. I think you could still end up getting to the end of your life and do the Stephen Covey, like the people at your funeral. You know what I mean? So, like, imagine that you're at your own funeral. Who's there? What are they saying about you? What legacy have you left? No one remembers that you were driving an Aston Martin. No one cares about that. You haven't impacted anyone else's life. It's when actually you fast forward your funeral and there's so many people there because you've made a difference in so many people's lives. That to me is purpose. That to me is why. Oh, we've done the podcast now, haven't we?
Boom. Yeah, thanks very much. That was lovely speaking to you, Richard.
Have I answered all your questions?
No, it's fantastic, and I totally understand where you're coming from, because I get that feeling every day when coaching people, and just seeing the sort of this transition and the growth and the exploration that people realise that they are capable of what they want to achieve in whatever form that may take. There's nothing that can beat that. It's incredible. For those people who aren't going to go into coaching and they're not an entrepreneur, what does their future look like? How do you help them work out how to transition?
The easiest way to answer that, most people are aware of the term fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Have a growth mindset. If you've got a fixed mindset, you're not going anywhere. So just sit down and genuinely ask yourself, like, am I curious about the world? Do I want to understand things more? And am I actually prepared to put my own opinions to one side and listen to someone else and actually but really try and understand their perspective? It's like we all have our own perceptions, right? We've all got our own unique set of belief systems that we've learned through the course of our childhood and adolescence, and our perceptions of the world are all completely different. If you do have a fixed mindset, you're only seeing the world through your own perspective, and having this curiosity. I'm speaking as a coach now. Obviously, I'm going to feel like that, and you'll be the same. But as a normal person who's got no interest actually in working with a coach, and maybe find it all a bit fluffy or whatever it might be. It's not, by the way, if you're listening to this thinking that. But is just be interested in other people's perspectives. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to agree with what other people think and what other people are saying. It's how do they see the world? And by doing that, you might just start to shift some of your own beliefs. You might just actually, that's a really good way of looking at the world. I might actually just explore that one. Because when we consider it from a cognitive perspective, like we always have the ability to choose how we respond. We can choose our thoughts. You can. And I mean, that's CBT. So the branch of coaching that I do is cognitive behavioural coaching. So we go into all of this. We kind of explore belief systems, and we explore thinking styles, and challenging your own thinking. Because if all of a sudden you can catch yourself, you've got a classic mind trap where you just catastrophize all the time, or you're a perfectionist, or why does all this always happen to me? It's like all or nothing thinking, right? Well, of course, it doesn't always happen to you, but people say that and they feel it. It's like things like this always happen to me. It's probably not actually correct. Just challenge that thought and see if there's a better one. It's not why. It's not like, why does this always happen to me? It's like, why is this happening to me in the moment? And let's explore it. Maybe there's something I can do behaviorally that could prevent it from happening again. And so long answer, another waffly answer to your question, Amy. I'm going to try and be a bit more concise.
No, there's no need at all. It's great.
But I would recommend to anyone who's not actually going to go and speak with a coach or may read a couple of good books around self-development. Just challenge your thinking, challenge your perceptions of the world, level up. Just always be looking to get better. Growth mindset. Don't stay where you are. Move forward. I mean, humans need progress. We need to feel like we're moving towards something. I mean, this is why the almost the majority of people, when they retire from their work, they don't actually survive as long as what they expect to. Because without purpose, without drive, without progression, there's not much that's kind of built in us. It's kind of what we need.
So why do you think that sportsmen and women struggle so much in those sort of 2 years that you mentioned after they retire, when they are all about growth and about progress and about excelling in whatever they do? Why do you think they find it hard to transition?
A lot of it will be lifestyle related. So if you've been getting paid a lot of money with a support system around you where you don't even need to think anymore. So when I started at Leicester Tigers, the director of rugby met me in the car park on my first day, 7 a.m. before anyone else arrived. Come with me. Showed me around the place. That's where you get your physio. That's where the first team change. You don't go in there until you burn it. I'm like, okay, fine. He sits me down in the changing room. He says 3 things: be on time, work hard, and be a good bloke. That's all you need to do. All right, simple enough. And I had it written up on the walls. It's just simplistic, because to create outstanding performances on the field, you need to pull together a group of large egos, big characters, and get them all driven towards the same goal, all aligned together, so that it becomes in flow. And rugby can be like poetry when it's flowing properly, or it can be like a car crash when players aren't aligned. So making things very simplistic for athletes leads to higher performances on the field. The reality is this: professional sport is a bubble, and you're not exposed to the real world. So a normal person, let's assume that they've gone to university, so they've left home for the first time. That's a challenging environment. They're living in probably some horrible student digs. They'll get out on the piss all the time. They'll make mistakes. They'll fall over. They'll hurt themselves. They'll drink. They'll throw up. And all of that. But all of that is learning, right? It's part of the challenges that make us emotionally resilient. They'll then go and get a job, and they'll start at the bottom making cups of tea, and they'll progress up, but then they'll get sacked. And Jesus, now they have to do a career change, blah, 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 blah. Either way, both parties, professional athletes and the individuals that we were just referring to, will meet at about the age of 35. Whilst a professional athlete is highly resilient in certain areas, outstanding at teamwork, outstanding at meeting a short-term goal, because you all remember we have games every week. So what's the next goal? 7 days' time, beat Bath Rugby Club. Right, I can work towards that. Now goals, you step in the real world. Well, goals can be 5 years' time, this is our target. So, you're not used to operating like that as a rugby player, or a professional, or a footballer, or a cricketer. So there's this adjustment. So at the age of 35, you find that professional athletes are lacking in real world resilience. So they haven't had enough failures and enough setbacks to learn, because that's how you emotionally develop and grow. You don't build resilience by winning all the time. And I use this with my pro athletes. You say, so what would you do if you won a game on the weekend? They would say, go out the piss, and we'd get the morning off on the Monday. You come in and you start training Tuesday. All right, what did you do when you lose the game that you should have won? the one that really hurts. They go, no one goes out to drink. Everyone's in Monday morning, 6 a.m. doing the video analysis, and we learn and we improve. So I then turn around and say, so what you're telling me is when you win, you don't improve. When you lose, you improve. So what actually do we want to encourage into our lives if our goal is to get better? Because that is how you build emotional resilience. That is how you learn. You learn. That's how a baby learns to walk. It falls over 1,000 times. And firstly, athletes haven't fallen enough. And secondly, they're not used to falling. And now they're 35 or older or younger. And it's harder. Your boss is probably 6, 7, 8 years younger than you because he's more experienced. He's been in the game longer. You still got to start at the bottom. You think you're told all these things like, "I'll build a good network and chat to all the guys in hospitality and that'll sort you out with a job." The reality is they'll bring you in for 6 months, but ultimately everyone forgets that you're a rugby player after 6 months. Can you deliver? End. So I'll speak to guys that are like, I'm thinking about going into stockbroking. Why? We can earn a lot of money. What do you think lifestyle's like as a stockbroker in reality? How hard do you think those guys work? How many times a day are they told no? It's hard, emotionally as well as physically, to be a stockbroker. Guys want to go into recruitment. If you want to be a really successful recruiter, gosh, have you got to work hard? Gosh, have you got to put in? There's this like illusion, it seems, to rugby players. You can earn 70, 80 grand a year as a recruiter. Reality is you'll start on about 20, 23. And it's only if you're shit hot that you're going to be getting the big commissions and so on. And so you'll also find that athletes churn their jobs. They'll do one for 3 or 4, 5, 6 months. And they go, nah, I don't like this. And they move job. So that takes, in order for them to kind of come to this awareness and acceptance that life's different, I don't know it all. I do need to work hard, but also like start at the bottom. That takes about 2 years to get to that point. So I try and fast forward them, but it is a process. You do need to go through this. You know this, you're a coach. You can't tell people what to think and how to view the world. They have to come up with it. And it's a journey, it's a process in order to lead them to that so that it comes to them and they understand it, because then they take ownership of it, right? If I told you something now, it's not yours. If we have a conversation and you say it, you own it, it's yours now. You're going to do it, you're going to believe it.
So what's your vision? Where are you looking to take this business and this space and to improve on the mental health of sportsmen?
There is no institution or centralized company that handle transitioning athletes globally across sport. Globally across sports, I mean. So the Rugby Players Association do a great job with the resource they have available. They're doing an outstanding job in helping rugby players. The PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, do a really good job. They've got their charity X-Pro do a great job, but it's within the resources that they have. So my original plan 2 years ago, was effectively to try and like collaborate, bring these, let's share resources, let's solve this as a problem. It's not about, let's make it non-profit, because it's a problem that needs to be solved. Because if we can do it in pro sport, that model will be replicable. It'll be very similar for the army. It would be very similar for people being made redundant, because it's all the same process. Because we're all the same animal. We're all human beings, right? Everyone's unique and individual within it, of course. But I've kind of stepped away from that a little bit. I'll work with athletes, but I work with other people as well. So my long-term vision will probably, at the moment, it looks like it will be in professional sport. There's maybe a director of rugby of a team in a higher league than National 1. But I'll always be coaching. So I haven't dropped a single client. I'm still taking clients on a one-to-one basis. I'll still be out delivering seminars and so on. But how can you impact the most people if what you're about is helping people or getting the best out of people? How can you do that on as big a scale as possible? You've got to be the person at the front of the room. You've got to be the person speaking at the events. You've got to be the person being invited onto podcasts such as Focus on Why, and you've got to maybe be putting literature out there that's credible. It's not just written as a life story or something. It's researched, and it would be usable within a master's degree or something. That sort of stuff will actually make a difference and change things. So I kind of waffled again, haven't I?
No, you need to stop apologising, because that's how this podcast works. I ask a question and then I just let the guests go off on their sort of tangent.
I mean, so to answer the question, because I know I did waffle a bit, fast forward 20 years from now, I'm going to be still working my socks off to get the absolute best out of people. End.
And why are you going to be doing that?
At the moment, it's athletes, and at the moment, it's executives and high net worth families and so on. That may shift, probably won't, because I relate personally to all of those groups. So I did just carry on, and you had just asked.
Well, I know I just asked why that was important for you to be doing that still in 20 years' time.
I think it ties into what I was saying earlier on about how would your funeral be? Stephen Covey, whatever the chapter was. I would want to be at my funeral with people in that room that I had made a difference in their lives. Their lives are better for me having been on the planet. In whatever small sort of way. This is something I was saying a couple of years ago when I was like justifying this new career to my parents, for example, whom challenged me on it, and my friends did as well. I had to meet a lot of challenge with this career.
Why?
What do you know about coaching? How are you going to get paid? How do you find clients? Don't you know the statistics? Oh God, this is going to be really hard. Are you sure? Like any entrepreneur starting any business, that's what you face. You'll always, the people closest to you want the best for you. So they're going to challenge you on it. Or that's certainly been my experience anyway. And I'll say to them this: look, I want to get to the end of my life having improved the world in a small little way, tiny little way. I want to be a net gain to the world, not just neutral or a net loss. And I think my previous mindset, when I just being completely honest now, my mindset when I retired from rugby was, let's go and do something where I can make as much money as I can. That's being completely honest. I don't have the same view anymore. It's not how I see the world. It's I think if you're outstanding in what you do, you'll be financially compensated for it. And don't get me wrong, I love nice things, but that's not the purpose. That's not the why.
What was a shift change behind that?
I think seeing a bit of failure. So when I retired from rugby, we turbocharged with our business, set up a debt lending business. So we're lending our own money and investors' capital, family office capital to property developers, and establishing a company that was going to roar ahead. And there's actually a specific example which has just come to me. I ended up in a boardroom at a big, large institution that do forward funding. And the deal that I was pulling together there was substantial. It was a hotel in London. And we weren't putting any of our own capital into it. We were just brokering the transaction. But I sat in this room, having done 3 months' work exclusively, literally 3 months full time on this deal. And the CEO walked in the middle of our meeting, and he said, "We're pulling the plug. We're overexposed in this area of our investment portfolio." I just went, "Can I swear on this podcast?" no, I won't. And that was kind of a moment for me where I just thought, why am I doing this? I've broken myself to get to this stage. Yeah, had that CEO had a different answer, I would have made a lot of money. But it's not worth it. And I think it kind of links again into it's failure that where you really start to realize what's important to you. It's when you lose. And I say this to my clients all the time. Why are you afraid of losing? Losing is when you grow. That's when you move forward. Like go out and just like expand yourself. Because the reality is this: if you're living in your own little comfort zone bubble, you ain't going to make mistakes, but you certainly aren't going to grow. As soon as you push out of your comfort zone, you move into unknown territory, right? When you're in unknown territory, phrases like "you don't know what you don't know" come up, and so on. But it's true, and you will make mistakes. So, depending on what the mistakes are, typically you'll see if you are making some errors, but it's because you're pushing your boundaries. My suggestion to you is that you're probably bang on target. Just keep going, because you're in the right space. You're not in your comfort zone. You're outside of it. And if you're really going to progress, you need to fail. Go and read any autobiography of a successful entrepreneur. What do they talk about? They don't talk about how great they are. They talk about all their failures. All the businesses that they tried and that just fell flat on their face. How many businesses has Richard Branson started over his years? He's gone bankrupt. Well, not bankrupt, but like he's had considerably more of his businesses fail than those that have succeeded. And that's common ground for successful entrepreneurs. Again, I can't remember the original question.
It's been incredible, and I think that you probably owe a big thank you to that CEO one day for changing your whole life.
Well, do you know what? You're probably spot on. I probably do.
Yeah. Well, Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I've really enjoyed hearing your why. Your sort of your purpose, your passion has certainly shone throughout, which is amazing. And I wish you all the best with your new directorship role, which sounds fantastic. Yeah. Tell me, how would people connect with you? Where do you hang out on social media?
Yeah, I mean, like you can go on our website at Cognacity, on my contact details there, cognacity.co.uk. You can reach out to me personally. I'm on all social media handles, Richard J.A. Thorpe, all one word, across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can always, it's a good way to get in touch, actually. And I mean, and why would you? I mean, like, so I'm a coach. I facilitate workshops. Also, if you're an outstanding pro rugby player, I've currently got a team that I'm currently recruiting for. So get in touch.
Brilliant. I don't think I count on that behalf there. Rely on others to reach out on that basis. So please, could you leave the audience with a call to action or a final piece of Richard Thorpe genius?
Oh gosh, right. Okay.
Put you on the spot now.
God, yeah. You had said to prepare something there, hadn't you? I would have to reflect over our conversation there. So if I were to come up with one thing, it have to be challenge yourself. And I don't mean challenge yourself to like go bungee jumping. I mean, challenge your thinking. Whenever a thought comes into your mind, recognize it, challenge it. What is that about? Is there a better opportunity? Is there a better option than that thought? Because our thoughts drive everything. It's got nothing to do with the events. It's all about our perception of the events, which is happening up here in the cognitive part of your body. So challenge your thinking.
Thank you for listening to the Focus on Why podcast. I'm Amy Rowlandson, and if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave me a 5-star Apple Podcast review. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram and Facebook, and become a member of my inspiring, uplifting and positive Focus on Why Facebook group. I help people to focus on their why with clarity, uniting their passion with their purpose with a plan, to create the life they truly desire. If you would like me to help you focus on your why, then please book a free 20-minute coaching call via calendly.com/Amy Rowlandson. And if you haven't already, please sign up for the Friday Focus weekly newsletter via my website, amyrowlandson.com. Have a purpose, have a plan, focus on why.